You're retired and doing nothing anyway. Watch my 3 kids for 3 months. Those words came from my daughter-in-law, Ashley Langley, delivered like I was the hired help. For 2 years, I'd watched this woman treat me like a useless old black woman. She'd talk over me when I spoke, dismiss my opinions as outdated, and constantly remind everyone about her Instagram brand while treating me like I was mentally declining. But demanding I babysit her 3 children, ages 4 to 9, for an entire summer while she vacationed across Europe, that crossed a line she didn't even know existed. See, Ashley made one crucial mistake. She never bothered to ask what I did before retirement. She assumed old and black meant powerless. She was about to learn the difference between being retired and being irrelevant. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Now, let me tell you about the day Ashley learned who she was really dealing with. I'm Teresa Langley, 64 years old, and until 3 years ago, my life had structure, purpose, respect. I'd spent 38 years as a family court judge in Fulton County, handling cases involving children, custody disputes, parental rights. People called me Your Honor for 4 decades. Then my husband Harold passed away from pancreatic cancer. 2 years of watching him fade. 2 years of putting everything else on hold. When he died, I felt lost, empty, like I'd retired from life itself, not just from the bench. My son Brandon tried to help, but he'd married Ashley 6 years earlier, and she had opinions about everything, especially about me. The first incident happened last February. I was teaching my granddaughter Maya about the importance of keeping your word when Ashley cut me off mid-sentence. Teresa, nobody wants to hear lectures about old-fashioned values. Kids today need to understand personal branding and digital literacy, not your outdated morality lessons. She said it right in front of Maya. The child looked confused, like she didn't know whose authority to respect. I stayed quiet that day. Kept the peace. But I noticed the pattern starting. The second incident was worse. At Brandon's birthday dinner in May, I mentioned how proud I was of his promotion to senior counsel at his law firm. Ashley actually laughed, and said, "Teresa, you don't understand modern success. Brandon's career has nothing to do with whatever work ethic you taught him back in the day. It's about networking and social media presence." She pulled out her phone, showed everyone her Instagram account. 76,000 followers, she announced. Brand partnerships with wellness companies, sponsored content, affiliate marketing. "This is how you build real influence in 2024, she said. "Not through whatever you used to do in that courthouse. Whatever I used to do." Like 38 years of judicial service was some hobby I'd dabbled in. I'd bitten my tongue that night too. But I noticed Mrs. Thompson, my neighbor, shaking her head in disapproval. She'd been a court stenographer for 32 years. She recognized disrespect when she heard it, especially the kind directed at black women who'd worked twice as hard for half the recognition. The pattern became clear over those 2 years. Ashley treated me like I was fading into irrelevance. She'd interrupt my stories, change the subject when I spoke, and always reminded people that I was just retired now while she was building her brand. She'd post photos of the kids on her Instagram with captions about raising conscious, inclusive children, but she never brought those children to visit me unless Brandon insisted, never brought them to my church, never let them learn about their grandfather Harold's legacy as a civil rights attorney. But the phone call on August 8th changed everything. I was tending Harold's vegetable garden when my phone rang. Ashley's voice, sharp and demanding. "Teresa, I need you to watch the kids for the summer. My wellness retreat group booked a European tour. 3 months. Amsterdam, Paris, Barcelona, the Italian coast. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. 3 months is a long time, Ashley. That's quite an ask. You're retired and doing nothing anyway. Consider it useful." Finally. Like watching her children would give my purposeless life meaning. What about summer camps? Daycare programs? Too expensive. Besides, your family, it's what grandparents do. I looked at my phone, checking if I'd heard correctly. $13,500 for a European wellness retreat, but summer camp was too expensive. Ashley, I'd need to think about this. 3 months is a significant commitment. Think about what? You sit around all day reading and gardening. At least this way you'd be contributing something meaningful to the family. Contributing something meaningful. I felt my jaw tighten. Let me call you back. Don't take too long deciding. We leave August 20th. The retreat is already paid for. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there holding the phone, staring at Harold's tomato plants. My husband had always said Ashley lacked perspective. She's young, Teresa. She doesn't understand what real work looks like yet. She doesn't understand what it cost us to build what we built. But Harold was gone, and Ashley's disrespect was escalating. The woman genuinely believed I was some useless old black woman taking up space, desperate for purpose. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went into my study and opened the bottom drawer of my mahogany desk. Inside was a nameplate I'd kept for 38 years. Honorable Teresa Langley, Family Court Judge, Fulton County. I ran my fingers over the engraved letters and made a decision. Ashley wanted to find out what this useless old black woman was capable of. She was about to get her answer, and she was going to learn it the way I'd taught hundreds of cases over 4 decades. Through the legal system, with evidence, procedure, and consequences she'd never see coming. The next morning, Ashley sent a text. No greeting, no please, no thank you. Teresa, need your answer by tonight. Already told the kids you're watching them. Don't disappoint your grandchildren. Don't disappoint your grandchildren. She'd weaponized my love for those babies, used Maya, Connor, and Noah as leverage. That was her second mistake. The first was underestimating me. The second was threatening my access to my grandchildren. I called Brandon at his office. Son, did you know about Ashley's vacation plans? Long pause. What vacation plans? So she hadn't even discussed it with her husband. I explained the situation, kept my voice neutral, professional. The voice I'd used in courtroom for 38 years when I was about to rule against someone who thought they'd already won. Brandon sighed heavily. Mom, I had no idea. Ashley handles the social calendar and the kids' activities. If she says this retreat is important for her brand, I trust her judgment. 3 months, Brandon. 90 days. I know it's a lot to ask, but honestly, it might be good for you. Give you something to focus on besides missing Dad. There it was. Even my own son thought I needed something to focus on. Like I was drifting aimlessly through retirement, desperate for purpose, waiting for someone to give my life meaning. What if I say no? Another long pause. Mom, Ashley is pretty set on this trip. She's been planning it for 8 months. If you can't help, I don't know what we'll do. Translation. Figure it out or face consequences. I hung up and sat in Harold's study, looking at his law books, his framed bar admission certificate, his photos from the civil rights marches in the 60 seconds. He'd fought for respect his entire life. Taught me to fight for it too. And I'd spent 2 years letting Ashley erase me because I was grieving, because I was tired, because I thought keeping peace mattered more than keeping dignity. But there's a difference between keeping peace and enabling disrespect. Harold knew that. It was time I remembered. That afternoon, Ashley stopped by unannounced. She walked into my house like she owned it, examined Harold's family photos on the wall with barely concealed disinterest. We need to talk about ground rules, she said, settling into Harold's favorite reading chair without being invited. Ground rules? If you're watching the kids, there are rules. No filling their heads with your old-fashioned ideas about respect and hard work. I'm raising them to be confident and assertive. And definitely no stories about your mysterious past career that you never talk about. Mysterious past career. She made it sound like I was hiding something shameful. Ashley, what exactly do you think I did for a living? She shrugged, scrolling through her phone while she talked. Some government job. Brandon mentioned you had decent benefits, so probably civil service. Social work? Maybe? Or administrative work at the courthouse. Filing papers, that kind of thing. Filing papers. 38 years of judicial service reduced to clerical work. And you think that qualifies me to watch 3 children for 3 months? It qualifies you to be useful for once. Look, Teresa, let's be honest. You've been drifting since Harold died. No purpose, no direction. This gives you something to do. You should be thanking me. I should be thanking her for the privilege of free childcare while she toured Europe on a $13,500 wellness retreat. Ashley, those wellness retreats you attend, do you report that income on your taxes? The sponsored posts? The affiliate commissions? Her face shifted slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Just curious about your business practices. My accountant handles all that. I don't need financial advice from someone living on a government pension. Government pension. She assumed I was struggling financially because I lived modestly, drove a 2018 Honda, shopped at regular grocery stores instead of Whole Foods. Here's what's going to happen, Ashley said, standing up and smoothing her athleisure wear. You're going to watch my children from August 20th through November 20th. In exchange, I'll make sure Brandon still brings them around for visits after we get back. Everyone wins. After we get back. Like my access to Maya, Connor, and Noah was a privilege she controlled. And if I refuse? Ashley's smile was cold, practiced, the same smile she used in her Instagram posts. Teresa, let's be real. You're lonely. You're bored. And frankly, you're not getting any younger. How many good years do you have left? 5? Maybe 10? Do you really want to spend them isolated from your grandchildren, from your only family? The threat was clear. Comply or lose contact with my grandbabies. I need until tomorrow to decide. Fine. But remember, the kids are excited about staying with Grandma. Don't break their hearts because you're being selfish. She walked to the door, then turned back. Oh. And Teresa? When they're here, I'll still be posting content with them. Family vlogs, morning routines, that kind of thing. It's part of my brand. Just make sure they look presentable for FaceTime videos. She left, and I sat in Harold's chair, still warm from where she'd been sitting. I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done 2 years ago. I started researching. Ashley's Instagram was public. 76,000 followers. Hundreds of posts featuring my grandchildren. Sponsored content with wellness brands, children's clothing companies, organic snack subscriptions. Every post carefully curated, professionally shot, designed to sell products to other mothers. I scrolled further back, found posts about embracing diversity through marriage and raising culturally aware children, photos of the kids at our family gatherings, captions about honoring Black heritage. But Ashley had only brought them to my house 6 times in 2 years, had never attended service at my church, had never asked about Harold's civil rights work or my judicial career. She was using my grandchildren's Blackness as content, as proof of her progressive values, while actively erasing their actual Black family from their lives. Then I found something interesting. A post from 3 months ago, sponsored by Paradise Wellness Products, Ashley holding supplements, caption about supporting her family's health naturally. The post disclosed a partnership, mentioned affiliate links. I screenshot it, kept scrolling, found 12 more sponsored posts in the past year. Some disclosed partnerships, many didn't. The Federal Trade Commission has very specific rules about disclosure in sponsored content, especially when children are involved. I'd seen cases in family court where parents exploited children for commercial gain. I knew the laws. I knew the precedents. And I was starting to see a pattern in Ashley's content that made my judicial instincts activate. I opened my laptop and pulled up something else. My contact list from 8 years on the bench. Judges, attorneys, child advocates, social workers. People who'd respected my work. People who still called me Your Honor, even though I'd retired. I made a list. Questions I needed answered. Evidence I needed to gather. Legal options I needed to explore. Because Ashley had made a critical error. She'd threatened my access to my grandchildren. And in my 38 years as a family court judge, I learned one fundamental truth. When you threaten someone's relationship with their grandchildren, you'd better be certain that person doesn't know family law better than your own attorney. Ashley was about to learn that lesson. The hard way. I spent the next 2 days doing what I'd done for 38 years, building a case. I started with Ashley's Instagram, downloaded every post featuring my grandchildren from the past 3 years. 247 posts. I categorized them. Sponsored content 47 posts. Affiliate links 63 posts. Brand partnerships disclosed properly 14 posts. Brand partnerships not disclosed 33 posts. The Federal Trade Commission requires clear disclosure when content creators receive compensation for endorsements. Ashley was violating those guidelines in approximately 30% of her commercial posts featuring my grandchildren. That was evidence point 1. Evidence point 2 came from Mrs. Thompson. She'd been watching Ashley's behavior at neighborhood gatherings for 2 years. "Teresa, I've been wanting to say something," she told me over coffee on August 10th. "That girl treats you like you're invisible." Last month at the HOA meeting, she introduced herself as a wellness influencer and entrepreneur. Never mentioned she was married to a lawyer. Never mentioned you. When someone asked if she had family in the area, she said no. She said no? Said she and Brandon relocated from the Midwest for his career. Didn't mention you lived 3 miles away. Didn't mention Harold's legacy. It was like you didn't exist. Mrs. Thompson stirred her coffee. I wanted to say something, but I wasn't sure if it was my place. "It's never been your place, Dorothy, but I appreciate you telling me now." That evening, I called my former clerk, Jennifer Washington. She'd worked in my chambers for 12 years before moving to the district attorney's office. "Judge Langley, it's so good to hear from you. How are you managing?" "I need a favor, Jennifer. Unofficial. A research question." "Of course. What do you need?" "If someone is generating substantial income through social media endorsements and affiliate marketing, what are their tax obligations?" Long pause. "Are we talking about someone specific?" "Hypothetically. Hypothetically, all income must be reported. Self-employment income, affiliate commissions, brand partnership payments, product gifting with monetary value over $600. If someone is operating as an influencer, they're essentially running a business. They need to report quarterly estimated taxes, maintain business expense records, and issue 1,099 forms to any platforms paying them. And if they don't? That's tax evasion, federal offense. The IRS has been cracking down on social media income specifically because so many content creators don't report properly. Thank you, Jennifer. Judge Langley, are you okay? This doesn't sound like a casual question. I'm fine. Just educating myself. But I wasn't fine. I was angry. Not the hot, impulsive anger that clouds judgment, the cold, calculated anger that fuels strategy. Ashley had spent 2 years dismissing me, erasing me, treating me like I was worthless. And now I was discovering she'd been potentially breaking federal law while exploiting my grandchildren commercially. On August 12th, I made my decision. I called Brandon. "Son, I've thought about Ashley's request. My answer is no. I won't be providing childcare for 3 months." Silence. Then, "Mom, Ashley's going to be really upset." "That's between you and your wife. She's already told the kids. They're excited. You're going to disappoint them." Brandon, I want you to hear something clearly. Your wife threatened me. She said if I don't comply, she'll limit my access to my grandchildren. That's not a request. That's coercion. Mom, Ashley wouldn't actually do that. She's just stressed about the logistics. She said it explicitly. Do you really want to spend your remaining years isolated from your grandchildren? Those were her exact words. Another pause. I'll talk to her. You do that. And Brandon? While you're talking to her, ask her about her tax filings for her influencer income. Ask her if she's reporting the sponsored content commissions, the affiliate marketing payments, the brand partnerships. What are you talking about? I'm talking about your wife potentially committing federal tax evasion while using your children as commercial products. As a lawyer, you should be concerned about that. Mom, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a question. One she should be able to answer easily if she's operating her business legally. I hung up before he could respond. Sat in my study, looking at the case file I'd built over 2 days. Evidence of FTC violations, documentation of potential tax evasion, screenshots of Ashley's threats, a timeline of her disrespect and erasure of my family's Black heritage while simultaneously profiting off my grandchildren's biracial identity. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was emotional, messy, disproportionate. This was accountability. This was what I'd spent 38 years doing. Protecting children. Enforcing standards. Ensuring that people who exploited family relationships faced appropriate consequences. Ashley wanted to know what I did before retirement. She was about to get a comprehensive education, and the curriculum would be taught the way I'd taught it for 4 decades. Through evidence, law, and consequences that couldn't be filtered for Instagram. My phone rang at 8:47 p.m. Ashley. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Then a text. Teresa, Brandon said you refused to watch the kids. We need to talk about this, like adults. Like adults. The woman who'd treated me like a useless old lady for 2 years wanted to talk like adults. I texted back, I've made my decision. It's final. You're being incredibly selfish. The kids will be heartbroken. Then perhaps you should have considered that before threatening to limit my access to them. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I never threatened anything. You're being dramatic and honestly a little concerning. Maybe Brandon is right that you're not thinking clearly these days. Not thinking clearly. There it was. The implication that I was declining, confused, irrational. I screenshot the conversation, added it to my file. Evidence of her pattern of dismissing me as mentally incompetent, that would be relevant soon, very soon. Because tomorrow, I had a meeting scheduled, not with Ashley, with Judge Patricia Hayes, my former colleague who still sat on the family court bench. We were going to have a very interesting conversation about grandparents' rights, child exploitation in commercial social media, and what happens when parents use custody as a weapon. Ashley thought this was about babysitting. She had no idea what was actually about to happen. Judge Patricia Hayes met me for coffee on August 13th at a quiet cafe near the courthouse. We'd served together for 18 years before I retired. She was one of the few people who still called me Your Honor out of habit. Teresa, it's good to see you. You look well. I look angry, Patricia. Let's not pretend otherwise. She smiled slightly. Fair enough. Your message said this was about a family matter. Legal consultation, grandparents' rights, child exploitation, possible custody concerns. I slid my tablet across the table, opened to Ashley's Instagram, my daughter-in-law, 76,000 followers, substantial income from sponsored content featuring my grandchildren. She's demanding I provide 3 months of free childcare while she tours Europe. When I refused, she threatened to limit my access to the kids. Patricia scrolled through the posts, her expression growing more serious. These are commercial endorsements. Are the children receiving any compensation? No. Ashley controls all income. The children don't even know they're being used for advertising. How old are they? 9, 6, and 4. Patricia set down the tablet. Teresa, you know this is complicated. Family court prefers parents resolve disputes without judicial intervention. I'm not asking for intervention. I'm asking for information. What are my rights? What are hers? What legal framework protects those children from commercial exploitation by their own mother? Why do I feel like you already know the answers and you're testing me? Because you're an excellent judge, Patricia, and you recognize when someone is building a case. She leaned back, studying me. What's your real goal here? Protect the kids? Or punish Ashley? Can it be both? It can, but you need to be clear about your motivation. Family court is messy, Teresa. You know that better than anyone. Once you start this, there's no easy way to stop it. Your relationship with Brandon will suffer. Your access to those children might get worse before it gets better. And if I do nothing? She's already threatening to limit my time with them. She's already erasing their grandfather's memory, their Black heritage, their connection to our family. Meanwhile, she's profiting off their biracial identity for her wellness brand. Patricia nodded slowly. That's the part that concerns me most. The commercial exploitation. Georgia law does have provisions about children and commercial work. If she's using them in advertising without proper safeguards, without educational provisions, without compensation held in trust for them, that's potentially actionable. What would you need to see? Evidence of substantial income. Pattern of exploitation. Proof that the children's welfare is secondary to commercial interests. And you'd need standing. Grandparents' rights in Georgia are limited. You'd have to demonstrate that limiting your access harms the children's well-being. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. She's made 247 posts featuring the children in 3 years. 47 are directly sponsored. Her brand partnerships with Paradise Wellness, Mindful Mama Products, and 3 children's clothing companies generate estimated annual income of $45,000 to $60,000. She's using their biracial identity as content while refusing to let them engage with their Black family, attend our church, or learn about their grandfather's civil rights legacy. How do you know her income estimates? I was a judge for 38 years, Patricia. I know how to research public business filings and influencer rate cards. Of course you do. She was quiet for a moment. There's another angle here. If she's generating that much income and not reporting it properly, that's tax evasion. That affects the children because it puts the family at legal risk. I've already documented FTC disclosure violations and probable tax issues. Have you consulted with Brandon about any of this? He's a corporate lawyer, not family law. And he's conflicted. He loves his wife and he loves his mother. I won't put him in that position yet. So you are planning to pursue this formally? I'm considering my options. Patricia finished her coffee, looked at me directly. Teresa, I'm going to say something as your friend, not as a judge. You have a legitimate case here. The commercial exploitation angle is strong. The threat to limit grandparent access is concerning. But family court is nuclear. Once you file, you can't unfill. Are you prepared for Brandon to choose Ashley over you? I'm prepared for my son to see the truth about who he married. That's not what I asked. She was right. I hadn't answered the real question. Was I prepared to lose my son to win protection for my grandchildren? To sacrifice my relationship with Brandon to hold Ashley accountable? I don't know, I admitted, but I know what happens if I do nothing. Those children grow up thinking their Black grandmother doesn't matter, thinking their grandfather's legacy is irrelevant, thinking family is something you use for content and discard when it's inconvenient. And you think a court case will fix that? I think consequences teach lessons that words can't. Patricia gathered her things. If you're serious about this, you'll need documentation. Financial records, communication showing threats, evidence of the children's diminished relationship with your side of the family. And Teresa, you'll need to be prepared for discovery. Ashley's lawyer will dig into everything. Your finances, your health, your mental state. She's already implying you're not thinking clearly. They'll use that. Let them. My medical records are clean. My financial records are impeccable. And my mental clarity is sharp enough to recognize exploitation when I see it. Then document everything. Every interaction, every threat, every broken promise. Build your case the way you'd expect litigants to build cases in your courtroom. I already am. She smiled slightly. Of course you are. You were always the most thorough judge on the bench. She paused at the door. Teresa, one more thing. Make sure this is about the kids and not about you. Because if it's about you, if it's about revenge or vindication or proving something, family court will see that, and you'll lose. After she left, I sat in the cafe, watching people walk by outside. Normal people with normal family problems, problems that didn't require legal intervention or court filings or the nuclear option Patricia had described. But my situation wasn't normal anymore. Ashley had made sure of that when she threatened my access to my grandchildren. I pulled out my phone and made another call. This time to an attorney I'd worked with for years. Someone who specialized in family law, grandparents' rights, and child welfare. Someone who wouldn't be conflicted about representing me against my daughter-in-law. Martin Richardson Law Office. Martin, it's Teresa Langley. I need to schedule a consultation. I have a family matter that requires legal representation. Judge Langley, of course. What kind of matter are we discussing? Grandparents' rights, child exploitation, and potentially temporary custody intervention. Long pause. Teresa, this is about your family? Yes. Are you sure you want to go this route? Family court is. Nuclear. I know, everyone keeps telling me that, but sometimes nuclear is necessary. When can you come in? Tomorrow. And Martin? Bring your best case strategist. This is going to be complicated. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the cafe window. A 64-year-old black woman who'd spent 4 decades enforcing family law, who'd ruled on hundreds of custody cases, who'd seen every tactic, every manipulation, every way parents weaponized children. Ashley thought she was dealing with a lonely old grandmother desperate for relevance. She had no idea she was dealing with someone who'd written the playbook on family court proceedings. Someone who knew every statute, every precedent, every angle. Tomorrow, I'd start filing paperwork, but tonight, I'd do something else. I'd call my grandchildren, tell them I loved them. Let them know that Grandma was fighting for them, even if they wouldn't understand what that meant until they were older. Because that's what grandmothers do. We fight, we protect, and we don't let anyone, not even our own children's spouses, threaten the children we love. Ashley wanted a war. She was about to get one. And it would be fought on terrain I knew better than she could imagine. The paperwork was filed on August 16th, a petition for grandparent visitation rights under Georgia Code Section 1973. Not a custody challenge, not yet. Just a legal request for court-ordered, regular access to my grandchildren. The kind of petition that required Ashley and Brandon to respond within 30 days. The kind that put everything on the legal record. Martin Richardson had been thorough. The petition included documentation of Ashley's threats, evidence of commercial exploitation, and a timeline showing my diminishing contact with the children over 2 years. 47 visits in year 1, after Harold died. 23 visits in year 2. 6 visits in the past 6 months. The pattern was clear. The petition was served at 2:17 p.m. on August 17th. Ashley called me at 2:34 p.m., her voice shaking with rage. "What did you do?" A sheriff just showed up at my house with court papers. Legal papers, Teresa. You're suing me? I'm petitioning for my legal right to maintain a relationship with my grandchildren. There's a difference. This is insane. You're taking me to court because I asked you to babysit? Because I offered you a chance to spend time with the kids? You didn't offer, Ashley. You demanded, and then you threatened to limit my access when I refused. That threat is documented, in writing. It's Exhibit C, in my petition. I never threatened anything. You're twisting my words because you're bitter and lonely, and you can't accept that I have a life beyond being your entertainment. Your entertainment. Is that what you think your children are to me? I think you're using them to punish me for not treating you like some kind of matriarch who deserves worship just because you're old. Old. There it was again. Ashley, I suggest you hire an attorney. You have 30 days to respond to the petition. Georgia law requires you to appear. Brandon is an attorney. He'll handle this. Brandon is a corporate lawyer, and he's a party to this case as the children's father. He can't represent you. You need family law counsel. This is going to cost thousands of dollars because you're having some kind of breakdown. Your son is going to see how unstable you are. She hung up. 3 minutes later, Brandon called. Mom, what are you doing? Ashley just showed me the court papers. You're actually suing us? I'm petitioning for grandparent visitation rights. It's a legal remedy available under Georgia law when parents unreasonably restrict grandparent access. Unreasonably? Mom, you turned down a babysitting request. That's not the same as being denied access. Read Exhibit C, Brandon. The text messages where your wife threatened to keep the children from me if I didn't comply with her demands. Read Exhibit D, the timeline showing how my visits have decreased by 87% over 2 years. This isn't about babysitting. This is about her systematically erasing me from your children's lives. She wouldn't do that. You're misinterpreting things. Then let the court interpret them. That's what judges do. A judge? Mom, you're taking this to family court? Do you have any idea what this will do to our family? Do you have any idea what your wife is doing to your children? She's using them for commercial content without proper safeguards. She's profiting off their biracial identity while refusing to let them engage with their Black heritage. She's treating your children as products. That's her business. Her income helps our family. Is she reporting that income, Brandon? Is she paying quarterly estimated taxes on her influencer earnings? Is she filing 1,099 forms? Because if she's not, she's committing federal tax evasion, and that puts you at risk too. Silence. Long silence. What are you saying? I'm saying you should review your joint tax returns very carefully. Ask your wife if she's reporting the $45,000 to $60,000 she makes annually from sponsored content and affiliate marketing. How do you even know those numbers? Because I spent 38 years as a family court judge, and I know how to research income disclosures for business partnerships. Ashley's brand deals are public. Her rate cards are available through influencer databases. And her lack of proper FTC disclosure suggests she might not be properly handling the tax obligations either. This is unbelievable. You're threatening my wife with tax evasion charges? I'm informing you, as an officer of the court, that you should verify your household's tax compliance. What you do with that information is your choice. I can't believe you're doing this. Dad would be ashamed. That landed hard. Harder than Ashley's insults. Harder than the legal battle ahead. Your father spent his entire career fighting for justice and dignity for Black families. He'd be ashamed that his grandchildren are being used as diversity props while being denied connection to their actual Black family. He'd be ashamed that you're letting it happen. I have to go. He hung up. I sat holding the phone, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. I'd drawn a legal line between myself and my son, put him in a position where he had to choose between his wife and his mother, forced him to defend Ashley's behavior or acknowledge the truth. Mrs. Thompson came by that evening with sweet tea and her characteristic directness. I heard the sheriff was at Ashley's house today. Courthouse gossip travels fast. I filed a petition for grandparent visitation rights. She nodded slowly. That's a bold move, Teresa. Are you prepared for what comes next? Define prepared. Brandon's going to be angry. Ashley's going to fight dirty. Those children are going to be confused about why Grandma isn't around as much during the legal proceedings. I know. And you're doing it anyway? Dorothy, if I don't fight now, I lose them permanently. Ashley's already cut my access by 87%. Another year, and I'll be lucky to see them on holidays. Is that what Harold and I worked for, raised Brandon for, so his children could grow up not knowing their black grandmother? No, it's not, she sipped her tea. For what it's worth, I think you're right. That girl needs to learn she can't treat family like employees and children like content. But right doesn't always win in family court. It does if you have better evidence. You always were the most prepared judge on the bench. She paused. What happens if you win? If the court orders Ashley to allow regular visitation, you think she's going to suddenly respect you? No, but she'll have to follow a court order, and her children will know their grandmother fought for them. Even if they don't understand it now, they'll understand it someday. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Brandon's words. Dad would be ashamed. Would he? Harold had always been the peacekeeper, the one who believed in dialogue over confrontation. But he'd also been the one who taught me that some fights are worth having, that dignity matters, that family means more than keeping false peace. I got up at 2 a.m. and pulled out the box of Harold's letters from his civil rights work in the 1,960 seconds. Found one he'd written to his mother in 1963 after the Birmingham church bombing. Sometimes keeping peace means enabling evil. Sometimes love requires confrontation. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. He'd understood. He would have understood this too. I hoped. At 7:18 a.m. on August 18th, I received an email from Robert Martinez, attorney at law. Judge Langley, I've been retained to represent Ashley Langley in the matter of your grandparent visitation petition. I'd like to schedule a call to discuss possible resolution before this proceeds further. It was beginning. The legal process I'd set in motion, the battle I'd chosen, and there was no going back now. Ashley wanted to see what this old black grandmother was capable of. Discovery was about to reveal exactly what happened when you threatened a family court judge's access to her grandchildren. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And I'd spent 38 years learning the difference. Discovery in family court is invasive by design. Both sides exchange financial records, communication logs, social media history, anything relevant to the children's welfare. Martin Richardson filed our discovery requests on August 23rd. We wanted 3 years of Ashley's tax returns, her business income records, and complete access to her Instagram account, including direct messages with brand partners. Ashley's attorney, Robert Martinez, objected immediately. Your Honor, opposing counsel is requesting private business communications that have no bearing on grandparent visitation rights. Judge Patricia Hayes, presiding over the case, gave him a skeptical look. Mr. Martinez, if Mrs. Ashley Langley is generating substantial income through commercial content featuring the minor children that's absolutely relevant to their welfare, discovery request granted. You have 14 days to produce documents. The documents arrived on September 4th. Tax returns showing Ashley reported $28,000 in business income for 2023, but my research suggested she'd earned closer to $55,000. The discrepancy was significant. Martin flagged it immediately. But it was the Instagram direct messages that changed everything. Page 47 of the production. A conversation between Ashley and a brand manager at Wellness Mama Products from April 2024. The brand manager had asked about featuring the children in a campaign. Brand manager, we love your family content. The diversity angle really resonates with our customer base. Would you be open to a partnership featuring your kids? Ashley's response, absolutely. And just so you know, they're only half black. My husband's mom is black, but the kids are light enough that they photograph really well. They don't look too ethnic if that's a concern for your brand. They don't look too ethnic. I read that sentence 5 times. My grandchildren, Harold's grandchildren, described like products with adjustable features, their blackness diminished, minimized, made palatable for white consumers. There were more messages. A conversation with Paradise Wellness from June where Ashley assured them, "Don't worry about the cultural appropriation angle. My mother-in-law barely sees the kids anyway, so there's no one to complain about how we present them." Another from July. The black grandmother thing is good for content because it shows we're inclusive, but honestly, she's pretty difficult to deal with, very old-fashioned, kind of dramatic. I keep her at a distance for everyone's sanity. Martin Richardson sat across from me in his office as I read through the messages. Teresa, this is damaging evidence. It shows she's been deliberately distancing the children from you while simultaneously using their racial identity for commercial benefit. It shows she's racist, against her own children, against my grandchildren. Legally, it shows exploitation and misrepresentation. But Teresa, releasing this publicly will devastate your family. Brandon will see what his wife really thinks about his mother, about his children's black heritage. There's no coming back from that. Should I protect his feelings while his wife erases his children's identity? I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to consider the cost. If we introduce this in court, it becomes public record. Ashley's Instagram followers will find it. The media might pick it up. Your grandchildren will someday read their mother describing them as not too ethnic. I thought about Maya, Connor, and Noah. Thought about them growing up, Googling their names, finding court records of their mother marketing their race. What's the alternative? Seal the records? We can request it, argue that it's in the children's best interest to keep this private, but Ashley's attorney might fight that because it makes her look worse. Good. She should look worse. She is worse. Teresa, I need to ask you something as your attorney. What's your goal here? Is it court-ordered visitation, or is it punishing Ashley? Can't it be both? It can, but you need to be clear with yourself about what winning looks like. Because if winning means exposing these messages, humiliating Ashley publicly, destroying Brandon's marriage, you might get that, but you'll also damage those children. They'll grow up knowing their mother was exposed, their family destroyed in court. Is that protecting them or using them to prove a point? I stared at the messages on the screen, evidence of everything I'd suspected. Proof that Ashley had been using my grandchildren's racial identity as a commodity while actively erasing their connection to that identity. What would you do, Martin, if these were your grandchildren? I'd want justice. But I'd also want those kids to have a functional family when this is over. Right now, you're on a path that ends with legal victory and family destruction. Ashley started this path when she threatened to keep my grandchildren from me. And you're finishing it by exposing her as a racist who exploits her own children. You're both right, and you're both destroying this family. That's what family court does. Everyone loses, just in different ways. I closed the laptop, thought about Harold, about what he'd say if he were here. He'd fought racism his entire career. Would he want these messages exposed to protect his grandchildren's dignity? Or buried to protect their innocence? File a motion to introduce the messages as evidence, I said finally, but request sealed records. The judge needs to see what Ashley's been doing. The public doesn't need to know unless it's necessary. And if Ashley's attorney argues against sealing, then it goes public, and she lives with the consequences of her own words. Martin nodded. I'll draft the motion. But Teresa, be prepared. Once we introduce this, Ashley will come after you hard. She'll argue you're vindictive, unstable. using the legal system for revenge. She'll make you look like the villain. Let her try. I've got 38 years of judicial reputation. She's got Instagram followers and racist DMs. We'll see who the court believes. But that night, alone in my house, I wondered if Martin was right, if I was using justice as a weapon, if protecting my grandchildren meant destroying their family structure, if winning in court meant losing something more important. Harold's picture sat on my desk. I touched the frame, wished desperately he could tell me what to do. Am I doing the right thing? I whispered. Or am I just an angry old woman who can't let go of disrespect? The picture didn't answer. It never did. But I knew what Harold would say, that some fights are worth having even when the cost is high. That dignity matters, that our grandchildren deserve to know their full heritage, their full family, their full story. Even if that story included their grandmother taking their mother to court, even if that story got complicated and messy and painful, because the alternative was silence, erasure, letting Ashley win by default. And I hadn't spent 38 years fighting for children's rights to surrender when it came to my own grandchildren. The motion was filed on September 8th. Discovery messages attached, sealed pending court review. Ashley's response came 48 hours later. Her attorney arguing the messages were taken out of context, that I was weaponizing private business communications, that this proved I was vindictive and unfit for unsupervised visitation. The hearing was scheduled for September 24th, 3 weeks away. 3 weeks for my family to tear itself apart while we waited for a judge to decide who was right and who was wrong. As if family could be divided that simply. As if love and law could be sorted into neat categories of plaintiff and defendant. Brandon stopped taking my calls entirely. Ashley's Instagram went private. And my grandchildren, caught in the middle of a battle they didn't understand, asked their father why Grandma wasn't coming to visit anymore. War had been declared. And there would be casualties on both sides. The hearing on September 24th was closed to the public, but word had already leaked. Courthouse reporters knew when a retired judge was involved in family court proceedings. Mrs. Cardinks, NTCA. Thompson told me there'd been whispers at the neighborhood book club. Ashley had tried to control the narrative, posting vague Instagram stories about toxic family members and setting boundaries, but her followers were asking questions. Judge Patricia Hayes called the hearing to order at 9 a.m. Brandon sat beside Ashley, his face unreadable. He wouldn't look at me. Martin Richardson presented our case methodically. The timeline of decreased visitation, Ashley's threatening text messages, the commercial exploitation of the children. Then he introduced the sealed discovery. The DM conversations. Judge Hayes read them in chambers, came back 20 minutes later with an expression I recognized from my own years on the bench. The look that said she'd seen something that changed how she viewed the case. Mrs. Langley, Judge Hayes addressed Ashley, not me. I've reviewed the communications between you and various brand partners. I have significant concerns about how you've been representing your children's racial identity for commercial purposes. Robert Martinez stood immediately. Your Honor, those were private business discussions taken out of context. My client was simply addressing brand concerns in the language of marketing. Mr. Martinez, your client described her children as not too ethnic and assured a brand partner they photograph well despite being half black. That's not marketing language. That's commodification of racial identity. Ashley's face went pale. Brandon finally looked up, confusion crossing his features. He hadn't seen the messages. Robert Martinez had kept them from him, probably to avoid this exact reaction. Your Honor, if I may, Martinez tried again, but Judge Hayes cut him off. I'm also concerned about the deliberate distancing of the children from their paternal grandmother while simultaneously using their connection to their black heritage as content. Mrs. Ashley Langley, you posted 23 times about raising culturally aware children while reducing Judge Langley's access by 87%. That's not just concerning, That's exploitation. I want to see those messages, Brandon said suddenly. Your Honor, I haven't seen what you're referencing. I'd like to review the discovery. Judge Hayes looked at Robert Martinez. Your client hasn't shared discovery with his wife's co-parent? We felt it would be inflammatory and prejudicial to family dynamics. It's my children being discussed. I have a right to see it. Brandon's voice was rising. Ashley grabbed his arm, whispered something urgent. He shook her off. Show me. Martin handed over copies. I watched. Brandon read. Watched his face change as he saw his wife describe their children as light enough to photograph well. As he read her dismissing his mother as difficult and dramatic. As he realized what Ashley had been doing while he defended her. This is what you think of our kids? His voice was quiet, dangerous. This is how you talk about them to strangers? Brandon, it's business language. I had to address brand concerns about diversity marketing. It doesn't mean anything. It means you've been selling our children's blackness while keeping them from their black family. It means you've been profiting off their racial identity while erasing it from their actual lives. Judge Hayes interrupted. We need to refocus on the legal matter at hand. Judge Langley has petitioned for court-ordered visitation. Given the evidence presented, I'm inclined to grant that petition with specific terms. Your Honor, please. Ashley spoke for the first time. I made mistakes in how I discuss things with business partners, but I love my children. I've never denied them access to their grandmother. This is all a misunderstanding. Mrs. Langley, you sent explicit text messages threatening to limit Judge Langley's access to her grandchildren if she didn't provide free childcare for 3 months. That's documented. It's not a misunderstanding. I was frustrated. I didn't mean it literally. Family court takes threats regarding child access very seriously. Whether you meant it literally is irrelevant. You said it, and Judge Langley had reason to believe you'd follow through given the pattern of reduced contact over 2 years. Robert Martinez tried one more angle. Your Honor, Judge Langley has the means and legal knowledge to resolve this without court intervention. This petition feels retaliatory rather than protective. Mr. Martinez, your client threatened a retired family court judge's access to her grandchildren and then documented that threat in writing. If anyone should have known better than to make that threat, it's Mrs. Ashley Langley. She chose this path. Judge Hayes issued her ruling, court-ordered visitation, every other weekend and alternating holidays, mandatory family therapy, and a formal review of Ashley's commercial use of the children with specific restrictions on future content featuring them without proper safeguards and compensation held in trust. The ruling also recommended Ashley consult with a tax attorney regarding her business income reporting. That was Patricia's way of saying she'd noticed the discrepancies without making a formal finding. Ashley left the courtroom in tears. Brandon walked out without speaking to either of us. And I sat there with my legal victory, wondering why it felt so hollow. Martin Richardson packed his briefcase. You won. Court-ordered visitation, restrictions on the commercial exploitation, everything you asked for. Then why does it feel like I lost my son? Because you did. For now, at least. Maybe he'll come around when he processes what Ashley was doing. Or maybe he'll resent you for exposing it. Family court doesn't do happy endings, Teresa. You know that. I did know that. I'd seen it hundreds of times from the bench. Families torn apart by legal proceedings, even when the rulings were correct. Children caught in the middle. Parents who'd never speak to each other again. Legal victories that felt like moral defeats. Mrs. Thompson was waiting outside the courthouse. I heard Judge Hayes ruled in your favor. She did. You don't look happy about it. I won the case. I might have lost my son. Give him time. He's processing that his wife was using his children as diverse props while keeping them from their black grandmother. That's a lot to absorb. What if he chooses her? What if this just pushes him further away? Then you'll have court-ordered visitation with your grandchildren, and you'll know you fought for them when it mattered. That's not nothing, Teresa. but it felt like nothing as I drove home alone. Felt like Pyrrhic victory. Felt like I'd won a battle and lost a war. The house was empty. Harold's chair was empty. And my phone stayed silent. No call from Brandon. No text. No acknowledgement that his mother had just fought for his children's right to know their heritage. I sat in Harold's study, holding the photo of him from his civil rights work. Did I do the right thing? I asked him again. Or did I just destroy our family to prove a point? The photo still didn't answer. But I knew what Harold would say. That fighting for what's right always costs something. That dignity has a price. That our grandchildren deserved more than being used as diversity content while being denied their actual diverse family. Even if that truth cost me my son. Even if winning felt exactly like losing. The first weekend of court-ordered visitation came on October 4th. Brandon dropped the children off without coming to the door. I watched from the window as Maya, Connor, and Noah climbed out of the car, their overnight bags in hand. No hug goodbye from their father. No wave. Just a quick departure like he couldn't get away fast enough. Maya was old enough to sense the tension. "Why doesn't Daddy come inside anymore, Grandma?" "Your daddy and I are working through some grown-up stuff, baby. But it has nothing to do with you. I love you just the same. Mommy says you're being difficult." "I'm sure she does. I help them with their bags." "How about we make cookies?" "Your grandfather's recipe." Mrs. Thompson showed me the neighborhood group chat where people were discussing it. "She's not welcome at book club anymore." Janet said Ashley tried to explain that the messages were taken out of context, but nobody wanted to hear it. How do you take "not too ethnic" out of context? I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. I never wanted it to go public like this. But you did want consequences. I wanted her to respect my family. I wanted my grandchildren to know their heritage. I didn't want to destroy her entire life. Teresa, you didn't destroy her life. You exposed what she was already doing. There's a difference. But was there? I'd used my legal knowledge to build a case that unraveled Ashley's business, her reputation, her social standing. Yes, she'd been exploiting my grandchildren. Yes, she'd been racist in her private communications. But had the punishment fit the crime? Or had I gone further than necessary because I was angry? Brandon called on October 12th. First time in 3 weeks. "Mom, we need to talk." "I'm glad you called. I'm not calling to reconcile. I'm calling because Ashley is falling apart. She's lost most of her brand deals. Her Instagram following is tanking. She's been dropped from her book club. And now she's got a tax attorney telling her she owes $47,000 in back taxes and penalties." "Brandon, I didn't leak those messages. I requested sealed records. But you knew they'd get out eventually. Family court records are public. You knew what would happen. I knew she needed to face consequences for exploiting your children. So you destroyed her business, her reputation, her entire social network? I didn't do that. Her own actions did that. Those were her words in those messages, not mine. You weaponized them. You used your legal expertise to systematically dismantle her life because she disrespected you. She threatened to keep your children from me, Brandon. She used them as commercial products. She described them as not too ethnic for better marketability. Are you really defending that? Long silence. No, I'm not defending what she said, but I'm also not defending what you did. You both went too far. And my kids are the ones caught in the middle. How are they? Confused. Maya asked why her mommy is sad all the time. Connor doesn't understand why we can't post family photos anymore. Noah is too young to know what's happening, but he feels the tension. This is what your court victory looks like, Mom. 3 confused kids and a family that can't be in the same room together. The court gave me visitation rights that Ashley was denying. The court gave you a legal remedy. But it cost you your son. Was it worth it? I didn't have an answer. He hung up before I could find one. I held my granddaughter while she cried, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. This 9-year-old child, caught between adults who couldn't resolve their conflicts without dragging her into the middle. It's not your fault, baby. None of this is your fault. But why can't everyone just be nice to each other? Why couldn't we? Because Ashley had disrespected me. Because I'd demanded accountability. Because neither of us had been willing to find middle ground before it escalated to court. Because pride and principle had mattered more than peace. Sometimes grown-ups make things more complicated than they need to be, I told Maya. But I promise you, your mommy and daddy and I all love you. That's never going to change. She looked at me with Harold's eyes. Daddy says mommy said bad things about you. Is that true? Your mommy and I had disagreements about adult stuff. But what matters is that we all love you and your brothers. Do you still love mommy even though she said bad things? Did I? I'd spent 2 years resenting Ashley. Then I'd spent months building a legal case against her. I'd exposed her racism. I'd contributed to the destruction of her business and reputation. Did any of that look like love? I love your daddy, and I love you kids. That's what I'm fighting for. But that wasn't what Maya asked. She asked if I loved her mother, and I couldn't honestly say yes. Maybe that was the real problem. Maybe that's what made this legal victory feel so hollow. I'd won justice but lost love, protected my grandchildren but destroyed their family peace. Harold's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. But sometimes the hardest thing is admitting you were right and wrong at the same time, that you can win and still lose everything that matters. 6 months later, the court-ordered visitation had become routine. Every other weekend, alternating holidays, structured and legal, and completely devoid of the spontaneity that family should have. I saw my grandchildren regularly now, but I'd lost the ease of dropping by, the casual Sunday dinners, the unplanned moments that make up real relationships. Ashley had complied with everything, paid her back taxes, $47,000 plus penalties, attended family therapy sessions, though she and I barely spoke outside the therapist's office, restructured her Instagram presence, posting rarely and never featuring the children commercially. Her follower count had stabilized at 32,000, a fraction of what she'd had, but more authentic, her therapist said. Brandon spoke to me now, but cautiously, like I was someone who might explode if he said the wrong thing. Our conversations stayed surface level. The kids' school activities, scheduling logistics, nothing deeper, nothing real. The man who used to call me every Sunday was gone, replaced by this distant, careful stranger. The mandatory family therapy ended in March. Dr. Sharon Williams, our therapist, had been blunt in the final session. You've all made progress in establishing boundaries and communication, but the underlying resentments haven't been resolved. Ashley still feels Teresa destroyed her life out of revenge. Teresa still feels Ashley exploited her grandchildren and disrespected her family. Brandon feels caught between two people he loves who can't coexist peacefully. So what do we do? Brandon had asked. You accept that some damage is permanent. Some relationships don't recover, they just learn to coexist. And you decide whether coexistence is enough. It had to be enough, because the alternative was complete estrangement, and I wouldn't do that to my grandchildren. Wouldn't make them choose between their grandmother and their mother. Last week, I attended Maya's school play. Sat 3 rows behind Brandon and Ashley, who didn't acknowledge my presence. Watched my granddaughter shine on stage, wished Harold could have seen her. After the performance, Maya ran to me first, hugged me tight. Did you see me, Grandma? You were perfect, baby. Ashley's face tightened, but she said nothing, just took Maya's hand and led her away. Brandon gave me a brief nod. Progress, I suppose? 6 months ago, he wouldn't have nodded. Mrs. Thompson asked me last Sunday if I regretted it, filing the petition, starting the legal battle, exposing Ashley's messages. Do you wish you'd handled it differently? I thought about it, really thought about it. I regret how it happened. I don't regret fighting for my grandchildren's right to know their family. That's not the same as saying you'd do it again. No, it's not. Because here's what I learned. You can be legally right and morally complicated at the same time. You can win in court and lose in life. You can protect your grandchildren and damage them simultaneously. Justice and love aren't always compatible. Ashley learned that exploiting children has consequences, that profiting off racial identity while erasing racial heritage is wrong, that threatening people's relationships with their grandchildren can backfire spectacularly. But she learned those lessons at enormous cost. Her business destroyed, her reputation damaged, her marriage strained. Brandon learned that his wife had been more calculating than he knew, that his mother was more formidable than he'd respected. That family conflict doesn't have easy resolutions, but he learned it in a way that left him unable to fully trust either of us. And I learned that being right isn't enough, that having legal standing doesn't guarantee moral high ground, that winning battles can mean losing wars, that sometimes the person who knows family law best is the worst person to use it against their own family. My grandchildren know their grandmother now. They know I fought for them, but they also know I fought against their mother. They live in a family fractured by legal proceedings, bound by court orders instead of love. Is that better than the alternative? I honestly don't know. Today is Maya's 10th birthday. She asked if Grandma could come to the party. Ashley agreed, probably because Dr. Williams recommended it. I'll go, bring a gift, sing happy birthday, and leave before the tension becomes unbearable. That's what coexistence looks like. Scheduled moments of carefully managed family interaction. Harold's picture still sits on my desk. I talk to him sometimes, tell him about the kids, about Brandon's distance, about Ashley's cautious civility. Did I do the right thing? I ask, knowing he can't answer. But I think I know what he'd say now. That fighting for dignity always costs something, that some battles are worth the casualties, that protecting children means different things to different people, and that maybe, just maybe, being right and being wrong aren't mutually exclusive. That's Teresa's story. That's what happened when I took my daughter-in-law to court for threatening to keep my grandchildren from me. I won. And I lost. And I still don't know which one matters more. Now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our community come together over these complicated stories about family, justice, and the price we pay for being right. Here's the real question, and I need you to be honest. Was I justified? Did I do the right thing taking Ashley to court? Or did I go too far by exposing those racist messages and destroying her business? Hit that like button if this story made you think. Share it if you know someone who's been caught in a family court battle. Someone who won legally but lost everything that mattered. Someone who's still wondering years later if being right was worth the cost. And subscribe for more real, complicated stories about grandparents' rights, family court, the cost of justice, and what happens when protecting people you love means destroying the family structure around them. Because the truth is, family court doesn't do happy endings. It does legal resolutions. And sometimes those resolutions break more than they fix. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.